Hello, Mr. TrampolineTales,
Hi,
developer,
hi, Alexa.
develop, developer of Luck Be a Landlord. How are you doing on this
I,
beautiful day?
I'm great. How are you? Thanks for
I'm
having me.
I'm fantastic. It's good to have you. We're gonna talk a little today just about Luck Be a Landlord, the development process. We're gonna talk a little bit about the upcoming 1.0 release. Very exciting. And just in general, pick your brain on various game dev related things. Luck Be a Landlord development processes and troubles and trials and all kinds of other things. So hopefully you're excited and ready.
I
Hopefully I
am.
don't break you too much.
Please do.
Okay, well then I was just given written permission that I can
Oh
break
no.
you.
All right. It's like Rocky Four.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So 1.0 release, Luck Be a Landlord. Game has been in development for how long now?
It's released January 8th, 21. Yeah, 21, and was in development a few months before that.
Okay,
So it's over 2 years now.
over 2 years. Okay, so wrapping up. I mean, two and a half years, more or less. Pretty big chunk of time in
Yeah.
your life. How does it feel wrapping up a project that big? You know, and kind of moving on towards looking at the future.
Good. I mean, in its concise sense. I it's the first time I've done a project this big and been able to complete it, so that feels really good. I've had tons of prototypes and smaller games in the past, and be able to finally cross the finish line with this one feels fantastic.
Nice. And so you mentioned having a little bit of game dev experience before kind of going all in on Luck Be a Landlord. And you had mentioned are you self-taught with
Yes.
game development? Okay. So some of those other prototypes for games, was it always, the idea of going the roguelike sense? Was, what other prototypes have you kind of made those smaller games?
Well, the first game I ever completed, was called Gaming Quote Master. It was a Flash game that is still up on my itch. You'd need a SWF player to play it, but I remember I put an exclamation point at the end of it, the title, because I think I wasn't confident in the title. So that worked out great. Where it was like it was a very simple game where there was a quote from a game and you had to say who said it. You had to type that in. So it's literally just matching strings. Very simple. And I had dabbled with a lot of games that were never really dabbled with a lot of roguelike-ish games, roguelite, whatever you want to call it. I just call them all roguelikes to piss everyone off in a sense because they're like Rogue. It doesn't matter to me. And I'd worked on a roguelike map generating prototype for a game I was going to make someday called Zombie Tower, which never turned into anything. But this was around when Dungeons of Dreadmore and Binding of Isaac, the Flash version, were getting very big. And that was where, I guess, the whole roguelike... I've been making games before that, but like roguelikes kind of, I guess, sparked something a little bit of like, they're infinitely playable. You kind of can... The random generation of it really got me going, I guess, as a designer. And most of my prototypes weren't... I mean, I didn't finish those, and the games I finished after that weren't roguelikes, but this one is, so... Yeah.
Gotcha. So,
I'm gonna ramble a lot.
Dude, I'm ready for the rambles. Feel free to ramble as much as possible. I'm ready for it, and hopefully some of these questions that I've got prepared, I'll let you ramble and kind of give us a true insight into where you're at with game development. But before we get into like the thick nitty gritty of Luck Be a Landlord's development, just reminiscing on the past some more. What would you tell yourself, or in some ways warn yourself, before starting serious dev work on Luck Be a Landlord? What do you think you've learned in the 2.5 years, and how do you think you've kind of grown as a game developer since starting?
So what would I tell myself if I were 2.5 years ago?
Starting out 2.5 years ago.
Ooh. I would say, I mean, there's boring answers of like implement modding support sooner, or not sooner, but like make the game more modular so I can add mods.
Create the foundation.
Yeah, just general like this game is going to be bigger than you think it is, so don't just jury rig some things together. Like initially, I thought like when I was working on the game, it was literally okay. I'm gonna hope I make a month or two's rent off of it, and then we'll see where that goes, and maybe I'll move on to another game after that. And now it's 2 years into early access, and it's been a phenomenal success for me. So, again, like there's a lot of stress I could have avoided if I had just said, okay, like I think I've told this in a blog post on Steam or something, but like the game was originally made for a game jam, where you had to make the window 64 by 64 pixels. And a lot of the code for that version, and I didn't actually submit to the game jam, I made it into a bigger project, but a lot of the code for that version was just kind of stretch the 64 by 64 like this to make it 16 by 9, and then made it 8 times bigger. So that's why a lot of the early versions of the game, before the UI scaling update, had really weird looking pixels. I don't know if anyone even noticed. I probably am the only one who noticed for the most part.
I did notice, but
okay.
Just figured it was a design idea.
Yeah. Nope. It was because I was just cramming things, scaling them down, then up again, and just like I'll get to it later. I'll get to it later. Then the UI scaling update took like months because, again, I didn't think it would matter.
Yeah.
Or things like that. But I've never really. In terms of from when development started to now, it's mainly just things like that. I wish I had made certain things easier for me later on. But other than that, I don't really have any regrets or anything like that. It is what it is.
Gotcha. Oh, that's good, I suppose. But better to have that than have a ton of regrets.
Yeah.
So let's, I'm taking you back 2.5 years. I want to start kind of our talk about Luck Be a Landlord's development at the beginning of the project. So the original idea, you said that you had kind of made it for a game jam, and then it turned it into a bigger project. How did you originally get the idea to make this, slot machine roguelike? What were the inspirations for it? And obviously the game probably went through some pretty major changes from beginning to end. What were some of those major changes? Were there content ideas that got scrapped in that process? Just kind of touch on that.
Okay. I could make like a whole thing about this. Like there's a lot that got cut, didn't get cut, got changed. But to start, the idea of Luck Be a Landlord was always, at the highest level sense, just I want to make a slot machine game.
Okay.
It wasn't a roguelike, a deck builder. Didn't have the rent thing. I just knew I've tweeted a thread about this a long time ago, but I always thought slot machines were fun in the sense of like in Pokemon Sapphire, the first Pokemon game I had, there was the game corner where you could just play the slot game and get coins, and it didn't really mean anything. And as the Pokemon games went, as more came out, they got rid of the game corner because ESRB is like, that's gambling, which it's simulated gambling, I get it. But lots and lots of gambling games were kind of getting pushed away, and there was always a little bit of a seed of not gambling is fun, but the mechanics that could be implemented into a slot machine or gambling game can be fun. This is a whole separate story, but I went to a casino once and it was horrible, like a really genuinely kind of traumatic experience for me where I had nightmares about it afterwards. Where I don't know, it was like I put in $20 and it became $60 in the slot machine, and I didn't know even why. Like none of the mechanics were explained to me. It was just like, oh, I have $60 now. Okay, it just the not knowing how it worked and putting money in it removed the fun.
Yeah.
And I kept going until either I had lost the $20 I started with, or I was a millionaire. I lost $20 to make a long story short.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to reinforce the idea that I could make money off of slot machines.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I wanted to make a slot machine game that I said something smart in the tweet, and I want to remember it because it sounds smart. That gave fun instead of taking money, something like that. I don't know. It was more elegant when I tweeted it. So that was kind of where everything started. If you look at early screenshots, I wish I had them prepared. I should have done that. But if you scroll back to my Twitter, just search at TrampolineTales #screenshot Saturday. It's got a lot of my early stuff if you want a visual for this.
Nice.
Which sucks because Twitter's probably going away, but I'll have to archive all that. I probably have it archived. The earliest screenshots still were pretty slot machine-y, where it was literally just a prototype of, here's a giant slot machine, and you get coins, and they have to match. Like, it was a slot machine where they had to be in a row or a cluster, things like that. Excuse me. And I'll abridge it a little bit where eventually I had that and I'm like, wait, how is this a game? Like, it's not really a game yet. You click it and the number goes up. I mean, that's fun. It's like the slot machine games I used to play as a kid.
Yeah.
And for a long time I was kind of resistant on the idea of the roguelike deck builder formula of like, okay, 3 symbols, add 1, etc. Or you're presented with the choice of 3 symbols and you click 1 to add. I always kind of hated randomness in games, which is weird that I ended up making this game. Yeah. Oh, with a slot machine in it.
Yeah.
Like I played a lot of Magic the Gathering, and the randomness always was frustrating to me. I understand it's part of the game, and it, kind of designed a lot of sensibilities for me with like drafting, as similar to a roguelike deck builder, and the concept of there are games that are unwinnable, but that's okay because you just try to tweak the RNG the best you can.
Yeah.
Or randomness the best you can. But where was I? So I eventually added things like adding symbols every spin, adding the rent requirement of like making your rent every spin or every couple of spins was one of the last sort of things to be added. Like, for a while it was just the adding of symbols, and okay, that's fun. What if there was some sort of lose condition? Or, and I guess by default win condition as well. And I was living in an apartment, I needed to make rent. That just kind of was always on my mind, so I put it in the game.
Gotcha.
And it's kind of not more complicated than that. And one last thing that I think is very interesting. The one of the first kind of like, oh, okay, I've got something here moments was when I added adjacency effects. That was one of the last things where it's like, okay, there's a big design space here. Because for a while it was just, you add symbols, okay, this one gives 2 extra coins every 3 spins, something like that. Wait, what if I did things where they're next to each other? Okay, what if some were destroyed when they're next to each other? That was another big one. Where destroying symbols thinned out your library, deck, whatever you want to call it. And it just kind of went from there, where the idea started there, but the cascading of, okay, there's a design space here, there's a design space here, made the modularness of the game, where like, if I think of an idea for a symbol, I can just kind of add it pretty easily, made it a very good project to work with.
Nice.
Yeah.
So talking about, you said that you could talk forever on things that were changed, things, that were scrapped. Yeah. I want to touch on one particular thing that had always kind of touched my mind with Luck Be a Landlord. Mm-hmm. When you have the 4 columns in their 5 columns, 4 or 5 columns, I can't remember.
Yeah, it's a 4 by 5
I just played
grid.
The damn game. I can't remember how many columns there are.
Funnily enough, that's also because it was 64 by 64. That's just what I could fit on the screen. Gotcha. There's no reason it's 4 by 5. It's probably better that way, but it's a complete coincidence.
Interesting. Oh, that's pretty cool. So those columns, I always thought it would be interesting to have the idea of being able to choose which column your new symbol goes into. Was that something that ever, came up in the design process? What other kind of big changes occurred in how those symbols end up in the grid?
So initially, I'm sure there's a build that was never released where that was what happened. Where it was like, okay, pick where you want to add it. You got to click where it goes. And then I kind of was like, okay, that doesn't really make for a fun enough gameplay where first of all, it slows it down, where you're choosing, okay, this should go here. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of enough for me to scrap that part. But thinking about it more, if say it's let's assume if we do it that way, the board state remains the same with each spin. There's less variety there, Like if I always want this to be in the rightmost column, then I always want let's say if I put a Beastmaster in the rightmost column and I put a rabbit above him, then that is always going to happen.
Yeah.
Eventually from that, it led to, okay, this is a digital slot machine, not a physical one. I can make the entire board randomized instead of just within each reel, or each column or whatever. So taking advantage of taking advantage of the platform and the design, the platform that I'm working in, was a big part of, I guess, my early design, not principles, but philosophies for this game.
Nice.
And I'm sure there's other cut stuff. I mean, there's plenty of symbols and items that I could never really make work.
Yeah.
I always wanted to have a rice and chessboard item with that story of the guy who he goes to the king and he says, "Oh, here's a chessboard. I get 1 piece of rice the first day, 2 pieces of rice the next day, 4 pieces of rice the next day." And it just doubles, and I just think it's a cool story, because then the king owes him billions of grains of rice or something at the end of it. Probably way more than that, just because of how quickly doubling works.
Yeah.
But it didn't make for good gameplay, where okay, you just kind of win if you get that item. There were tons of scrapped, what's another one? I wanted to have a mode where it was always winnable. In the sense of an AI would go through it and kind of say, okay, if you pick this will happen, and there's always a path to win. That was almost impossible for me to code where I'm at.
That sounds horrible.
For simpler games it's possible, but for this it just was really, really hard. There's probably some okay, here's a good example. Slay the Spire, which this game is inspired by quite a bit. Inspired by, I never thought of that, that's funny. Has mechanics of, if you, let's say, I don't know if this is an exactly one, but if, let's say, you take Claw, I think you're more likely to see claws. Mm-hmm. Things like that, where, depending on what you've taken, you are more likely to see things that synergize. And for a really long time, there was a good chunk of the community who wanted that for Luck Be a Landlord. And I tested it, I've looked at it, I've designed around it. It just does not work for this game. It makes the game less fun. Yes, in theory, it could make the game easier and more consistent.
Yeah.
But it just means if you take 3 cats, you're only going to see Beastmasters. Or you could do you only get 1 of them if you have a certain amount. Then becomes, why didn't I see it? If I have 4 cats, why? And then it needs to be a guarantee, and then there's no real variety at all. There's going to be games where you try things and you lose. And one of this may be a bit of a tangent, but one of the more frustrating things to see players play the game with, and this is just something I have to do as a designer, where players will quote-unquote play the game wrong, but that means they learn. Yeah. Either learn how to play it better, or just keep playing it wrong, which with my game is actually kind of okay, because there's a lot of fun slot machine interaction-y stuff, where even if they play wrong, they're eventually going to win a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't like saying playing wrong. Play suboptimally. Where was I going with this? Oh, yeah. If a player plays you know, if a player, basically a lot of the game is about pivoting, and like if you say I'm going to go an ore build, or like I am going to go a toddler build, I see a lot of, like, it's weird how frequently I see content creators start their videos or retries with that. Like, you've done it too.
That's
me.
Yeah. I am that content creator.
Yeah.
That's me.
And but like everyone does it. Like, I watch almost all the videos of everyone, like all the streams I can. And so many people on a retry will do that. And I'm sure it's a design philosophy thing. I should probably try to tap into it somehow and for my next game. But it's just so interesting where you say that, or a person says that, and then you have no influence over that. Like, it doesn't, you can't just do that. You're kind of setting yourself up to fail even more, because so much of the game is about, like, okay, well, I've been offered 3 cats. I hope I get a Beastmaster. There's also options with milk, witches. I can get Lucky Cat. I try to create a lot of different paths for players to go.
Yeah.
But sometimes it'll be like, oh, I got 5 ores, I got a golem, let's do it. And then you get no support for them, which, again, goes back to maybe there should be some sort of, not seeding, some sort of influence of, I have these symbols, I should get these items, or these other symbols. But it didn't work when I tried it. So, and I just think the randomness of it makes for better gameplay. So
that's super interesting, and it touches a little on what it's like to balance a strategy game like Luck Be a Landlord. And I have a whole section of my notepad about balance later, because I feel like that's a never-ending long story to talk about. So we'll touch on that a little bit later. But in our timeline, so we've moved from the initial development of the game, where we're at now. We're in early access, and the game has just launched, and Luck Be a Landlord saw some pretty crazy popularity there at the very start of early access, and it was probably partially due to content creators, but partially because you had done some interesting things with your early access release that I have never really seen in other roguelike games, or just other early access games as a whole. You did the constant updates and putting the actual time until the update would launch in the game. Do you think that helped to kind of stoke the game's popularity by having people know, Friday of this week, Luck Be a Landlord update, I'm ready to jump back in? What was kind of your decision to go with that?
Honestly, that is primarily just, I don't watch as many anymore, but I watched a lot of GDC talks, Game Developer Conference talks, of other designers and developers saying what worked for them. And the developer of, I believe it was 20XX, the Mega Man-like game, Mega Man X-like game, who basically literally just said, put a timer in your early access game. And he went into more detail. And at first, the timer has been twofold, and there's been a lot of good things with it, and some bad things where if I don't make a deadline, which happens semi-frequently, I have to delay or update the timer and delay when it actually says, which can be frustrating. And from what I found, no one really gets upset. Like, it's just like, oh, okay, you didn't make the deadline, you're gonna make this one, okay, whatever. And it really only hurts me when I feel I failed or whatever. But one, it creates, like you said, a lot of word of mouth hype, etc. I've noticed every time there's an update, not only when I release a content patch do my players kind of have a bit of a spike. Leading up to that, my players have a bit of a spike, like a few hours beforehand, which leads me to believe that the timer is creating, like, okay, I'll play a little bit, and then the update will happen, and then I'll play more, things like that. So the other good thing about the timer is it keeps me in check, like, it keeps me accountable. With ADHD, it is really hard to be accountable for tasks. I tried removing the timer for a while when, like, it was really hard to make a deadline, and that was an awful idea. Like, it's like, well, it's not there, I'll just get it done when I get it done. It's like, okay, I'm not doing anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
talking more on popularity,
Mm.
we've seen, especially recently on Twitch, the kind of obsession with the slots and the gambling. Do you think that kind of shift towards really popular creators on Twitch playing gambling and slots related games helped out Luck Be a Landlord's popularity? Do you think it harmed it?
I personally have not seen a correlation where, because there's gambling streams on Twitch, Luck Be a Landlord was affected positively or negatively. Yeah, it's kind of boring, but I don't really see a correlation there.
Okay.
One thing I do want to say, I just remembered. You mentioned that Luck Be a Landlord's success was at the beginning of early access. It's kind of not exactly that, which I find very interesting, and I think some other developers would as well. Where a lot of people will say your best sales figures will be at the beginning of early access and at version 1.0. It was not that case for Luck Be a Landlord.
Interesting.
This is getting true and true of more games where... Excuse me for just 1 second, sorry. You're supposed to fill, Alexa. Okay.
Sorry.
Where you'll release a game, it might do okay, it might not. And then for whatever reason, be it a content creator or a big resurgence of something, it'll just peak like a year and a half into its development. Like Among Us did, like my game did, where January was okay. It did very well. It got a little bit of coverage, and it was like enough for me to be like, okay, I can keep going with this.
Yeah.
February and March is the most I've made ever with this game. And I could just say in units, like it's the most units I've sold by a wide margin. I won't go into exact numbers, but like the boost of so many content creators playing it, Northern Lion, Aliens Rock, etc., just was huge for the game. Like if I hadn't, I don't know if they would have covered it if I hadn't emailed them, but like if they hadn't covered the game, it would be nowhere where it is now.
Yeah.
And just the boost of getting a lot of people to play it. The Steam algorithm likes that. That is really where, like, I think if it was January, February, March, April, etc., and then May, I don't know this, I don't have the numbers, but like I could see things looking very different. Where like if there was no early big boost to the sales and to the popularity of the game, it wouldn't have the legs continuing forward. Where like not even from like a motivation standpoint, just from like a Steam promoting it standpoint of like this is still doing well,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now I know what it's like as a content creator fighting with a content recommending algorithm.
Yep.
What is it like on the developer side with Steam? And you mentioned that you've also posted your other kind of prototypes for games on itch.
Yeah.
What's your opinion on Steam as a whole, itch as a whole, other game publishing platforms?
To talk just about itch and Steam, because I could be here all day. Itch is very good in that you can put a game up there for free, and you can sell it. Basically, no cost to you. Literally, no cost to you if you make the cut. They receive 0%. They'll let you do that if you want to. But they will do almost nothing to promote it, which is fine. It's a free platform.
Yeah.
And that's, again, you have to do the promoting there. Steam feels to me like YouTube in a lot of ways, but more so like YouTube in, I'll get my years wrong, like 2010 or something.
Okay.
Where if you're even remotely a success, you're going to get some recommended stuff. Like the biggest hurdle that recommendations by other, places on Steam.
Yeah.
The biggest hurdle developers need to get over really is having, I think it's 10 reviews on Steam, is what will really push your game into probably like another tier of the algorithm. I don't know how it works for sure, but like you'll see a lot of games with like 8 or 9 reviews where it won't even have like the positive mix. Overwhelmingly, those only come after you have 10. And it seems like that's what causes a lot of virality virality to happen.
Interesting.
I think I have a bit of a leg up in that I used to do YouTube a lot when I was in high school, which helped me kind of learn, like, okay, you need to do this to stand out. Thumbnails are so important, which Steam calls them capsules. They're basically the same thing.
Interesting.
Things like that. Like, I watched a lot of marketing talks before releasing the game in early access, which I think was so important. So many devs will work like years on their game and spend no effort on marketing, which is fine. You don't think you have to. But then you put your game out there like, it's out there. And then, like, no one finds it because you didn't show it to anyone.
Yeah. Interesting. So I wanna touch on this. We're not gonna spend a lot of time on it, but was there ever any fear in creating a game where the main theme of it was more or less defeating capitalism? I'm sure you have some really good stories from people's reactions to it as a whole. Yeah.
Let's see. And I don't mind talking about this, but I find some of the Steam reviews very funny. I'm very tempted to put them on my fridge sometimes. But let me see. Was there for fear of it? Not really that concept. I mean, no, not really. I mean, if anything, I thought it would make it stand out more. Like, I didn't think, like, what's gonna happen. Like, Steam's gonna be like, oh, this is anti-capitalist. We're gonna
the capitalist police come after you.
Yeah, I mean, kinda. Like, maybe that's something that could happen, but, like, I don't know. Just, like, I guess just say, I mean, you look at what's on Steam, it's kind of like they don't really moderate a lot of things.
Oh yeah, there's some truly heinous games that get uploaded to Steam on a daily basis. So I could see, like,
a game that is against Steam's business model being, I mean, in a way it is, I guess, but, like, I don't know. The short answer is no. I wasn't really concerned about it.
Interesting. Yeah. I think that it works so well, and it just adds, like, that little extra character. Like, the first time you see, the guillotine item, it's just it's so on the nose for a game that is already on the nose, and it's that extra layer of, I mean it. Like,
I think a bigger concern was that, like, people would say, oh, well, this game's anti-capitalist, but you're selling it for money. Which, like, I got a lot of that at the beginning. And then it's kind of like, well, you put effort into this product and we live under capitalism, so whatever. you need money to survive. Yeah. It's fine,
That's interesting. So, back in our timeline, we're past that original early access. The game's selling, it's doing well. Now we're into some of the major updates that came. And two major updates come to mind for me now when I think about, my coverage of Luck Be a Landlord over the past 2 years. There's the Essence update, and then there's now the boss battle.
Yep.
Were either of these two things planned anywhere in your brain from the beginning? Where did you start to think about the idea of the Essence update, and then where did the boss battle come from?
So Essences were not planned. I knew I wanted to have more items in the game. And I knew flooding the item pool with, like, 100 more items, if they were in the same pool, could cause a lot of issues with, like, consistency. Eventually it kind of became the idea of, where did it start? It was kind of just, what if there were items that did one thing? You got them. It was kind of just you got items that destroyed themselves, did something, and then you had some sort of bonus. I think the first one I designed was what would it be now? The fertilizer. It would be close to the fertilizer essence now, where seeds grow into watermelons and then you lose the item.
Gotcha.
Something like that. I'm pretty sure that was one of the first ones I designed. And I designed a few more, and I'm like, oh wait, each one of these kind of corresponds to an item. And the design space feels kind of easy to work with. What if I just did one for every single item? And honestly, it was hard to implement, and it was a monster to translate. But when it was finally done, it added a lot to the game, obviously.
Yeah.
It wasn't balanced all that well. I had to tweak it a lot, but that's a whole separate conversation. But essences were just kind of, I want to put more in the game. How can I do that without breaking it? Oh, here's a way, and I did.
Yeah.
It wasn't that complicated. The boss battle, I'd like to say I planned it all along, but it also was kind of last minute. It was like, I always knew I wanted to end the game in some way. Like, just having it be, you reached 777, you beat your landlord, yay. It was fine for early access, but like, I didn't want to make 1.0 have that be the ending for apartment floors. I don't remember exactly how it came to me. This is a weird thing with me where like every artist I've ever met says, if you get an idea, write it down.
Yep.
And I never do that. Just my thinking is, I mean, it's a little unfortunate because it creates like less of a record of when I come up with things. But what I do like is, if I have an idea that I like and it's good, I will keep thinking of it.
Yeah.
If I have an idea that I think I like, it's probably not good if I don't keep thinking of it.
Interesting.
So that's just the way I do it. It probably doesn't work that way for everyone. But some sort of boss fight was always there. For a while, it was going to be... I knew it was going to be like... The landlord's like, all right, let's fight. Yeah, not literally that. But it's basically something like that. And like, the original idea was all the symbols would go away. They might come back after you win or lose the boss fight. But you get like a bunch of symbols that are like punch or kick or something like that. And they deal damage instead of getting you money. But then it became like, well, how do you lose? What does the landlord do? And it just kind of became tweaked from there. Was fine print always in there? Fine print was pretty late. Like, I don't remember exactly when everything came to be, but it was very like, how do I do this? And I'm just kicking it around, and eventually all the pieces fall into place. And honestly, I thought everyone would hate it. Like, I'm thrilled with how much people like the boss fight.
I think it's cool.
I mean, thank you. I think like it might just be because it's like it's so different from what I had designed in the past with the game, even where if I'm adding like, okay, here's a new symbol, people probably like it. I mean, you may not like how it works, but they don't have to see it all that often. The boss fight is the end of every floor, and once you unlock it, and it's like, okay, my main concern is like, I thought I was going to win, now I'm not. And that's or like, it slows down the game. Those were the two complaints I thought I was going to get. But from what I've seen, it's just like, if you lose, it's like, well, it's a boss fight, I need to try again, Or, and no one really complained that it was too hard, which was intentional. I tried to make it not that hard, especially at earlier floors, and get harder at the higher floors. But yeah, those two big patches, like you said, never were planned from the very beginning. I mean, in a sense, the boss fight was kind of planned because I wanted some more finality, but in no way, shape, or form like they are now. So
interesting.
Yeah.
So you touched a little on the fine print system in the boss fight. One, I think it's brilliant. I think that's what really makes that boss fight interesting is each spin you do being forced to, here's another thing you got to deal with. It puts a little thought into you. So I have a technical background as well.
Sure.
I've done a lot of coding, know a lot of stuff. Those can't all be hard coded, all of those attacks into the game. You have to have some kind of system on the back end that's generating those fine print attacks that the boss is doing.
When you say generating, what exactly do you mean?
So I'm assuming it's pulling, your items and symbols that you have, and then there's some kind of like action list of.
Where it'll be like, okay, you have a bunch of monkeys, let's make the monkey less good.
Yeah, something like that. How is that kind of designed on the back end?
Sort of. I honestly think, okay, so if you have, the way it's supposed to work is, let's say you have a bunch of coins. Okay, so if you have, let's say, a certain type of inventory, The game, if it needs to add fine print, will try to roll one of the X amount of fine prints that are in the game. Out of all the fine prints, there are the effects and like what symbols or items it affects.
Gotcha.
The symbols and items are not rolled when it rolls the fine print. Once it picks a fine print, this is probably not a good way to do it, but whatever. Not optimal way to do it, but it makes for good gameplay, I think. It checks, okay, I have this fine print. Out of all the symbols that can be, or let's just say symbols to make it simple. Out of all the symbols that can be slotted into this fine print, let's say X cannot be destroyed or removed. Actually, that's a bad example, because that one is hard-coded. Some of them are hard-coded, some of them aren't.
Okay.
X gives one less. Out of all the ones of X give one coin less, it'll then say, okay, here are all the symbols in this pool of ones that would make sense for them to give one less. Does the player have any of those symbols? If the answer is yes, I believe because I coded this very quickly. I believe it picks the one with the most in the inventory and then nerfs that one.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And if it can't find any, it re-rolls which fine print it is, removing that one from the pool. Why I say I believe is I haven't completely tested it, and I'm pretty sure sometimes it just kind of gives up and says like, okay, you don't have any ninjas, but I'm going to nerf ninjas. And I kind of want to look into that, but at the same time, it's one of those things where like if I make it better, it makes it harder.
Yeah.
So maybe it doesn't make sense to do that. Where like I think of the game, do you know the game Lugaroo? It's like a bunny fighting game. It's made by the devs who made Overgrowth.
Unfortunately, I don't.
Okay, it's a bunny combat sim where they're like humanoid bunnies. And the dev of it said, like, okay, I want to be really realistic. Where, like, if you're fighting 3 of them, they won't just all wait and be like they'll all pummel on you, and that gets really hard. And it creates for interesting gameplay, but, you know, imagine, like, Dark Souls, if when one of the things saw you, it's like, hey, everyone get over here, and they all just ran at you.
Yeah.
You know, it would be impossible. Like, it's one of those things where, like, I can make it make sense gameplay-wise, but that'll make it harder.
Gotcha.
Or, like, less fun. So,
yeah,
it, quote-unquote, not working correctly is better, you know?
Yeah, it's like that little bit of breath of fresh air when you're getting clobbered in the boss fight, and then you get, you know, the line that is not affecting you. Like,
yeah,
it's like
seeds cannot grow. Like,
yeah.
I mean, if you have a combo seed build, that's bad. Otherwise, it's like, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, and I see people be like, when they're playing, it's like, oh, that doesn't matter. And then you feel like, I got one up on the Landlord, and then you're going to win. Like, it's good, you know? Yeah. It doesn't make sense, but it
feels good.
Exactly.
Yeah. Helps the player feel like they're doing something.
A lot of the gameplay decisions that, quote-unquote, don't make sense but feel good, I always lean to the feel-good stuff. Like, for example, I forget who it was. It might have been you, it might have been Aliens Rock. I don't remember. You're both Tyler. It was a key destroyed a lockbox while adjacent to also a magic key. In that instance, it will always prioritize the key being destroyed, but the magic key multiplier will still happen. Because, like, you know, it would be like, oh, I lost the key, and I don't get the multiplier, that stinks. Like, it still works. Like, the magic key is still adjacent, but you don't want to lose a magic key, because then, I lost a magic key instead of the key. So I try to favor the player where possible, and also be like, oh, okay, yeah, it would suck if it was that way. You know, like, if you end a rent cycle with 0 coins, I just give you a coin. Because it doesn't feel good if, like, I made it to 700 coins, I lose.
Yeah.
If you make it to 701, it's the same thing. Just get the coin, you know. And it creates a problem of like, oh, well, 699, 698, 697, where does it stop? And for me, it says 700, you made it 700, it's fine.
Yeah. That's interesting. And we're going to talk about balance here in a second, and that all comes into it. And I can't even imagine how many little fringe case scenarios, like having a key and a magic key hit something at the same time. I mean, there has to be hundreds of little tiny interactions like that in the game, but we'll talk about that in a second. I want to touch real quick on another update that, in my opinion, revolutionized Luck Be a Landlord, and I think that you agree with it too, because you touched a little bit on it earlier. The mod support, Steam Workshop. I've played a ton of mods now. You kind of know that I tend to go on the modded route now with the game.
Yeah.
And each time I play, there's something new that the modders have done that just blows my mind. What was it like creating that modding API, having to rework some of the internals of the game so that you could have modders interacting with it? And what kind of changes have you made over time to the mod API to improve, how people, came to you with, hey, it'd be cool if I could do X with a mod and having to tweak things?
It's a really hard part of the game to work on, both for me personally, just, I don't know, it just doesn't align with my brain all that well, and with just, it's tough to, like, not from like I don't want it to look like I'm thinking like I don't want people messing with my game. Like it's more so just things break, and like I know why they break. Someone modding the game probably doesn't know why they break.
Yeah.
And if I could just give everyone access to the source code, or just say you can just drop script files in there, I would. But I just can't deal with like malicious code stuff.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how Slay the Spire does it, where I mean, I do know how they do it, where they just say, okay, just put Java files in there, which could literally just wipe your whole computer.
Oh, yeah.
It's same for if I just open the script files, and I don't know, you can trust certain files on the workshop if they're upvoted, but like, I just don't want to open that can of worms, so I create like this kind of, I don't know the right word for it, like semi-limited API where you can implement modding effects, but you couldn't say like, if someone, before the boss fight was added, if someone wanted to add something like the boss fight, they couldn't really do that.
Yeah.
They can just add symbols and items and things that tweak things. It's been pretty tough. It's not where I want it to be. The documentation's not where I want it to be. I want to get that done after 1.0, and I don't know when it'll be done, but it will be done. But I love some of the things people have made. It hurts me when someone makes a mod and then it doesn't work for some reason because like either they didn't understand it because I didn't have the documentation good, or like it just doesn't work the way it's supposed to, because I can just, when I'm making not even a mod, symbol, I just go into the code and kind of hard code things sometimes. And when it's like, okay, this gives 3 if this is 2, and sometimes it just doesn't for mods. I mean, and I want it to be so much better than it is, but that's just going to take time.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, modding has not been, at least for my game, it doesn't seem like just number-wise it's been that important. Not from like a enjoyment standpoint, just from like how many people play with mods. And I'm very curious if other developers have had, I should ask them, like similar experiences where like a very small percentage of your players will play with mods. It's very good for your game, don't get me wrong. And it creates a lot of, it lets other people be very creative, which I love. Mm-hmm. But sometimes thinking like, oh, I got to get the modding working or else everything's going to fall apart. Like, I think like less than a quarter of players use mods, probably less.
Interesting.
So like, my focus really should be with the vanilla game. But once that's done, mods all the way,
That's cool. It's interesting also to hear you touch on, the malicious code within mods. I come from a security background. I work in security, and I've been struggling recently. I've been playing a lot of Brotato. Great new kind of auto battler game. And the modding community for that game is really starting to explode a little bit. But they do, the game is in Godot, I believe.
Yeah, that's what this game is in as well.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, so
I'm guessing they just do script files.
So it's they just package the entire .pck and just that's, you just install that instead. Okay. So every time I run a mod, I throw it in a sandbox to to record it, because I'm like, I don't really want any, like, I don't trust anything.
Yeah, in Godot, it's so easy to, like, if you just literally say to the engine, delete every file on my computer, it'll just do that. Like it doesn't care. It doesn't have a warning message.
Yeah.
So if I say, okay, load this script file into my game, and then it does that, that's a nightmare for me. That's a nightmare for everyone.
Yeah.
Let's just make it an API. It's more annoying. It's more work for me, but it's for the best, honestly.
Yeah. It could be a new fine print for the boss battle. Just in there is
delete every file on your
delete this
computer.
registry key from me. So something wild. Okay, we've been teasing it for a while. I want to talk about balance in Like Be a Landlord. It's a strategic game, many intricate moving parts, literally the symbols moving. How hard is it to balance all of those moving parts in Luck Be a Landlord?
It feels too easy.
Really?
Which is weird.
Okay.
Like, I don't know why. Maybe I'm just good at it. I don't have a good answer as to why it's easy, but like, I found there are a few philosophies I apply where making numbers smaller is almost never a good thing. Like, if something I apply a very I think it's Dota, where it's like, don't nerf something, buff everything else. I try to do things like that. It's not always possible.
Yeah.
But like, one of the hardest symbols to balance would probably be the cultist, where I'm not super happy with how it was nerfed, but it kind of has to be that way. Where it used to give 1 and now it gives 0, but if you have 3, it's back to how it was. Effectively. Okay, here's a good example. Like, when I was first testing the game with just some friends before it was even in early access, coal didn't transform into a diamond after 20 spins. It had a 2% chance to transform into a diamond.
Interesting.
So it's more or less the same thing. I mean, law of averages, it's a little different, but I had a player play the game and he just took 3 coals. I'm like, well, you're going to lose. And he's like, no, it might turn to a diamond. I'm like, oh, that's a problem. So I kind of, where there's randomness, I try to standardize it a little bit. Not always. Like, Goose is still fun because the chance is so low.
Yeah.
Goose is still kind of like the protocol where there's a chance it'll go off, but there's also synergies. It still gives 1, so you're not like screwing yourself. But balance-wise, I love balancing the game, so maybe that's another good part of it, where if you overbalance, it can be an issue. But like, just little tweaks. Like, I think of the game as like, let's say, for example, with lockpick, for a while it gave a 30% chance of breaking chests. I changed it to 35% after a few patches, and it's like, okay, let's say the amount of players who would win a game because of that goes up by like 0.00275% or something dumb. Like, little things like that, when you add them up to like make the game more enjoyable, and also, I guess, technically easier, but not so much that it's too easy. Like, I think that is something I really enjoy doing. And like, there's like, excuse me 1 second, nitty gritty of, what should the numbers be? I think one of the easier parts is that I don't have like I don't do like multiples of 10 for the gold or for the coins. Like, if something gave 10, if like 1 coin was equal to 10 coins, do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I could then do decimals, or like 5 coins for like what would effectively be 0.5 coins now. Mm-hmm. Forcing myself not to do that means that the balance is a lot easier, because then it's not like, this gives 0.3 more. Like, that doesn't mean anything to anyone. Yeah. But you can kind of get away with it, like symbols like snail technically giving 1.25. And honestly, okay, this is a good part, where I don't know why I said it like that. This is the good part. This is what you've been waiting for. I do not collect any analytics for the game.
Okay.
Which I think a lot of people think is crazy. Games like, I think, Slay the Spire does it or did it. Darkest Dungeon did that. And they also, I know Slay the Spire in one of their GDC talk, not the game itself, the devs gave a talk about bad data, where like based on the way they collected data, they thought Madness was one of the most popular cards in Act. I think it was either in Act 3 or all of the game, and that's the one where I think it's for one. It doesn't matter what it was.
Yeah, one cost, you get something else is 0 cost. Yeah.
Yeah. And the reason they thought that was because of the event where you get 2 of them, and that's basically the most favorable outcome of that event.
Yep.
And they're like, okay, well, this card's being picked a lot. Oh, wait, no, it's kind of just because we think it's being picked a lot because of that event. And so many players end the game with those in their deck. Because it's in Act 3. Excuse me. I basically avoid all of that by not collecting any data from, like, a mathematical standpoint. And kind of just feel out, like, okay, a lot of players are complaining about this.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky in that I have enough players to hear complaints. If the game was less popular, I might need to do that. But also, if the game was less popular, I could probably just balance it myself.
Yeah.
I don't know. The main thing is just, like, also when players complain about something. Complain is a harsh word, but it's fine. You know, I understand it's, like, feedback.
Yep.
When players will say, suits are not powerful enough. Which, like, patch 0.1, they weren't. Like, suits were all... I think they were all uncommon and didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Or maybe they were all common, I don't remember. Either way, no one said make suits give more if there are 3 of them. They just said make them better. And it's like, or suits suck, or, you know, which is fine. But it's my job to be like, okay, I can make them all give 3. That'd make them better, but that's not fun. I can make like, okay, you gotta collect 3 of them. And then it's like, okay, it's like cards, suits, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. The main thing is just, with balance, those are the main takeaways for me, is like, don't collect data, just get a kind of a feel for it. You're good enough to, like, know what the numbers mean. You play your game all the time. I'm talking about myself when I say you. I don't know why. Anyway. Tangents. I collect enough, I play the game enough to know what the coin value should be. I think I'm a good enough designer that when people say this needs to change in some way, I can figure out, okay, I don't just make the number bigger or smaller, I try to tweak it. Like, I add a different effect, I make everything else better or worse, I change the symbol value, or like the rarity values to make them show up more or less. And yeah, just things like that, I think, are marks of, I don't want to say a good designer, because that's just me tooting my own horn too much, but like, marks of things I've learned over the years that I think are correct to do. And so far I've seen it pay off pretty well, where people are like, oh, I didn't even think you would do that, but yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it works.
You know? Yeah. That's
interesting. So you actually somewhat answered the next question that I was going to ask you, but I want to ask it anyway.
Go ahead.
Talking about the hardest symbols to balance in the game. I know that, you know, the suits definitely went through a ton of changes at the beginning. They were underpowered, then they were overpowered, then they were back to, you know, kind of where they are today, which is relatively balanced. You talked about cultists a little bit as well. Has there been a symbol other than those 2 that has just always nagged at you that something is just off about it?
At this point in the I mean, at times in development, yeah. At this point in the game, I'm really happy with how everything is balanced.
Nice.
I'm trying to think. Maybe... I mean, Cultists I'm not super happy with. Basically, Cultists mainly because, like, you need to force yourself into it, and then afterwards, either you get it or you don't. That just doesn't really feel like good design to me. But I also know players like it, so I can't just remove it.
Yeah.
It just kind of has to be that way. I can't think of too many symbols or items where it's like, I just don't know what to do with this thing. Because, like, if I didn't know what to do with it and it was a problem, I'd probably just remove it. If I completely had no idea what to do with it, but I usually know some sort of solution for it. Like, Coin on a String for a while was just a worse pool ball that would had a chance of breaking.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, well, I want to keep the theme of it, where like you're putting the coin in, you're taking it back out, and then I'll take the coins out of the machine that are in the slot machine, remove all the coins. Okay, that works too, and then makes the item a lot better.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Was there ever something that you put in a balance patch for? And I know that, you tend to have a bunch of the hot fixes and things like that to the patches. Was there ever something that you balanced just extremely incorrectly and didn't catch, and then the community kind of caught it and was like, hey, the cat is giving 200,000 coins right now, kind of thing?
In terms of things that I had to change, yes. But they're not that exciting. It's just like Frozen Fossil was originally uncommon. Elder Screecher was rare. I needed to bump those up a rarity. Now it's fine. Nothing too exciting there. There are things that are accidents that are still in the game. Like, I didn't plan Midas Bomb plus Telescope would wipe the whole board, but that's fun.
Yeah, it's fun.
So it's a weird interaction from the mechanics of the game, but that's great. I love when people accidentally do it. It's very fun to watch. I'm trying to think. Things that I got wrong that I'm like, okay, I gotta change this. Frozen Fossil, suits were a little too powerful. Essences were probably too powerful at first. I'm trying to figure out whether I like making things better and then dialing it back, or making things bad and then dialing it forward. I'm pretty sure making things underpowered and then dialing it forward is better. Because either if I am then overestimating, then it's fine. If I'm underestimating, then I get to buff things, and everyone's like, oh boy, buffs.
Yep.
If I make things too good and then dial it back, either I got it right, or then I'm dialing it back and I'm like, nerfs. So it's probably better to just be like, try to shoot below where I think the power level should be, especially in early access.
Yeah.
And then buff it a little. Like, that's kind of what I did with Tortoise and the Hare. Where I'm like, okay, I don't know how powerful it's going to... Like, this is very late design for me in terms of early access. I think it's probably 77 power level for coins. I'll make it 50, see what happens. Okay, you're right, it's 77. I should have probably done that with essences, where I make them less powerful. But at the same time, it was like a big new feature in the game, and I want people to enjoy it, but it was too strong. It made the game too good. Or the essences too good.
It's interesting. So, Luck Be a Landlord sitting in a state, a roguelike game, where you have to have extreme balance, but there's also, those wacky synergies, like, Midas Bomb wiping the entire board.
Yeah.
Let's create a scale. Left side is extremely balanced. Every game is a close call, something like that. Right side is you're wacky and unbalanced. Like Binding of Isaac on the far right, Slay the Spire on the far left. Where do you think Luck Be a Landlord sits in its current state on the scale? And is that where you want it to sit?
That's a good question. I would say on average it's in the middle. Somewhere in the middle. Maybe a little closer to the right. It depends on what floor you're playing on as well, but let's just say floor 1. Actually, if it's floor 1, it's definitely the right of the spectrum where everything's wacky. I've noticed it depends on the player a lot, though. A lot of newer players just won't skip symbols.
Yeah.
So, floor 1, you can still win it, but it's going to be a closer call. Which makes the apartment floor system really important. I wanted it, for a long time, I wanted it to be a Slay the Spire, where it's like, you either get... Well, the problem is I wanted it to be, you make rent by like 3 coins, if you play correctly. For a while, that's what I wanted. And the problem is, if you make a mistake, you lose rent by like 2 coins, and that feels terrible.
Yep.
If it happens a lot, anyway. And once in a while is fine. So eventually it was just kind of accepting, like, with the way the game is, and the way it's designed, I'm more to the right than the left. That's a weird thing to say. On this spectrum. With this game. It could be wacky and random and still be close, which I like a lot. Like, one of my favorite things about my game, which feels a little weird to say, but I designed it, to be something I like, was that you don't really just say, okay, I'm going to get, this is another reason I cringe a little when people say, like, I'm doing an ore build. Sorry, that's not a dig at you. That's everything. Where like if you okay, I got miners. I'm making ores. I got a geologist, etc. I love builds where it's like I've got a beastmaster. I've got like a milk. I've got an eldritch creature. Well, I guess that all synergizes. But you also got like gems. You might as well have chemical 7, sometimes void creatures. All sorts of things going on, and the pivoting of it that I love the wackiness of it, but that's also kind of designed in a way where that's what you're supposed to do, you know?
Yeah. No, I hear you. So, as we come to the end here, we're on the timeline. We're now coming up to the 1.0 release. Really exciting, but it does beg the question of your future plans after Luck Be a Landlord. You obviously came up with an insane idea for a slot machine roguelike, and that opens up the question of what other weird, funky roguelikes can be made. Have you had any other ideas for, other weird roguelike variations? Or, is Luck Be a Landlord your I came up with this weird thing and I'm out of ideas?
Definitely not out of ideas. They're all gonna, well, I don't want to say they're all gonna be weird. They probably will be. There's plenty more games I want to make. Not all of them are roguelikes. The two I'm kicking around right now, it's too early to announce anything, but neither of them are roguelikes. I don't know exactly. Well, actually, no, one of them might be. Again, it's so early where I don't know yet.
For sure.
But I definitely have projects I'm excited to work on, and there will definitely be more.
Nice. I'm couldn't be more excited for them. Really interested to see what your brain comes up with next.
Me too.
I'm sure. So this is the quick answer round. I do this at the end of every interview. I'm just gonna throw 5 questions at you. Don't even think about it. Just immediately spew an answer.
Okay.
Okay. Are the arrows truly random?
Green. No, sorry. What?
Are the arrows in Luck Be a Landlord truly random?
No, because true randomness doesn't exist.
That's a good.
We're gonna be here a while.
That's a good answer to that question. But yes, okay. Favorite symbol in the game?
Ooh. Eldritch creature / frozen fossil from a design standpoint.
Interesting. Okay. Favorite item in the game?
Lefty the rabbit.
Okay. I mean that's fair. That's very fair. You can only play one roguelike game for the rest of your life. What is it?
I'm gonna not say my own game, but then it would have to be Slay the Spire.
Okay. That's a good answer. And then final question, is a hot dog a sandwich?
It's trying its best to be, and that's enough.
Okay. I'm good with that. Well, Mr. TrampolineTales, thank you so much for the interview today. Awesome to get a little bit of insight into kind of your development process behind Luck Be a Landlord and kind of the growth that the game has gone through over the years. To everybody watching, Luck Be a Landlord 1.0 releasing in January, so go check it out now so you can be there when it goes live and check out the new achievements that'll be in the game and all of that. But it's been a pleasure, man. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me. Bye, chat. I closed you because you were too distracting.